You are sitting in a PM interview. The interviewer looks at you and says, design a notification system for busy professionals. And your brain just goes blank. Or another version, you start talking rubbish or you ramble around for 3 minutes about something around push notifications, toast messages, emails, and so on and so forth. And somewhere around minute 2, you realize you've dug yourself into a deep hole. No structure, no users, and no way out of that interview and getting shortlisted. I've been on both sides of the table. As a PM, as a founder, and as someone who coaches product managers through these exact interviews every week at Ayuda. And here is what I can tell you. Product design is the single most common question type in PM interviews. Every single company asks for it, from early stage startups in Kormangla, Bangalore, to Google, Microsoft, Flipkart, Swiggy. Everyone. And it's the question most candidates actually get wrong. Not because those candidates are not smart, but because they don't have a system to answer these questions. Today, I am going to give you that system. I'm going to give you a step-by-step understanding of solving product design questions with real examples from Indian and global companies. So the next time you get one of these questions, you don't freeze. You actually take control of the conversation and go deep into it. Before I give you the framework, I need to reframe something that trips up almost for every candidate. Whenever an interviewer asks you, design X for Y, they are not waiting for you to invent the next billion-dollar product in the next 10 minutes. That's not the test in a product design interview question. If that were the test, every PM at Google would actually be a billionaire. They're actually evaluating you through 4 lenses. Think of this as a rubric that they have in their head while looking at your profile. You can see that on the screen. Lens number 1 is structure. Can you take something vague and messy and organize your thinking clearly? This is foundational. Without this, actually nothing else really matters. Lens 2 is customer empathy. Do you actually understand your users? Or are you just projecting your own experience and calling it user research? The third lens is prioritization. You cannot solve everything, of course, but can you decide what matters the most? Can you make trade offs? And the fourth lens is communication. Can you walk someone through your reasoning in a way that's clear, confident, and extremely easy to follow? And this is so important to know because it's always less about what you design and more about how you design in product design interview questions. At Ayuda, we've reviewed over 500 mock interview recordings. The number one reason candidates actually get rejected is not bad ideas. It's unstructured thinking. They jump directly into solutions without establishing who the user is or what the actual problem is. At Flipkart, for example, the PM interview rubric literally has separate scores for structured approach and user centricity. So you can have the best product idea ever in the interview and still fail because your thinking was all over the place. Let that simmer in for a second. The best ideas will actually give you no guarantee of making it inside a product design round. So before we understand how to answer these questions, let's try and understand what not to do. Let me try and show you what a bad answer actually sounds like. And I'm going to role play this for you. The question is going to be very simple. How would you improve in-person grocery shopping experience? Here we go. Yeah, great question. So as a shopper myself, I think the biggest problem is definitely the checkout line. It's always very painful. Every single time, it's a very long line. So I think we should build an app where customers can scan items as they shop and pay directly, skip the checkout queue, and reduce the time taken on that line. Self-checkout already exists, but it's very clunky and we're in the age of tech, so we should be able to do it pretty quickly. Now, I sounded confident, right? And what I was saying was also logical. It wasn't like I was saying something random. It made sense. It was a good idea. But let me help you understand what actually went wrong in that. Pretty much everything. First, I assumed that my personal pain point applies to every single shopper on the planet. A college student's grocery pain point is completely different from a parent's shopping for a family of 4. I did not do any user segmentation. I just went ahead and thought that my problems are everyone's problems. Second, I jumped to a single solution and did not offer any alternatives. What are the odds that my first idea is the best one? And even if it were, I still gave the interviewer nothing to evaluate trade offs in my mind. Just the first thought that came to my mind, I gave it to them. The third, I completely ignored feasibility. Companies like Amazon have spent 8 years and billions of dollars on their just walkout technology, and they've still not been able to get it right. They've put cameras on every shelf, and you know, I just casually proposed the same thing in 10 seconds like it was a weekend project. So I did not even consider the amount of money this will take. This is exactly what an unstructured answer looks like. It sounds really confident on the surface, and at the first go, you feel, oh, this was a good answer. But then the moment you just peel one layer, you feel that this is just really bad. Another example, a lazy PM probably doing an interview at Cred would say, hey, why don't we just add more rewards to increase engagement? But Cred's actual insight was about building aspirational identity for premium credit card holders. The solution has to come from deep user understanding and not some random feature brainstorming. That is the entire difference here, which is what we're going to fix with this video. Let me show you exactly the system that you need to follow to get this right. At Ayuda, we teach this 6-step approach for product design questions. And I want to be clear about something. This is not an acronym that you memorize and recite. It's a thinking system that you internalize through practice. Acronyms are great for memory, but they help no one if you're just applying them robotically. Step one is the scope of the problem. Clarify the goal, constraints, and your own rule. Step two, identify and select your users. Step three is to uncover their needs and pain points. And step four is to brainstorm solutions. Step five is going to be all about evaluating trade offs. And step six is going to be about recommending and acknowledging risks. Now, here's the critical thing, this is not a script that you should recite in an interview robotically. It's actually a scaffolding. The interviewer should never feel like you're going through a checklist of ticking out items from a script. It should feel natural and should flow through the conversation. The framework is your safety net, which means that it ensures you don't miss anything important, but it needs to be invisible to the interviewer. This actually mirrors how real PMs work, by the way. When Razorpay's product team decides what to build next for their merchant dashboard, they don't start with, what's a feature idea that sounds cool. They actually start with, okay, what is the problem that our merchants are facing and why should we solve now? The same framework that you see on your screen, the same discipline is being followed by Razorpay as well. Notion also does something similar. They're obsessed about scoping before solutionizing, which is why their features feel cohesive and not strapped on and bolted on. Every new feature maps back to a clear user need and a clear trade-off decision. Same thinking across two top product companies. Now, of course, let me walk you through each of these steps in detail. The first thing that you do when you hear a product design question is to resist the urge to solve it. I know it's very tempting. Your brain hears a problem and it immediately jumps to solutions. But the best candidates actually do the opposite. They slow down and ask clarifying questions first. But not lazy questions. Not questions like, hey, what do you want me to do? Or should I make a design app? Should I make a mobile app? Etc. etc. That's actually fishing for the answer, which is what tells the interviewer that you cannot think without a lot of support. Here is how you should ask good clarifying questions. There are 4 categories like you see on your screen. The first is asking about the goal, which is, are we trying to increase revenue, engagement, retention, customer satisfaction, etc. Second is asking about constraints. So are there any budget or timeline constraints and limitations that I should keep in mind? Third is context, where you say, hey, when you say improve the shopping experience, are you talking about the full journey or are you talking about a specific point in the checkout, taking from the Check out example that we just discussed earlier in this video. The fourth is role, which is, should I think of myself as a PM solving a problem here, or as a startup founder building this from scratch, etc., etc. Because that changes the kind of resources I'm going to assume while I solve this. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're interviewing at PhonePe, the big fintech company in India. And the question is, design a feature for first-time UPI users. A weak candidate starts solutionizing immediately. A strong candidate is going to ask, hey, are we targeting rural India where feature phones dominate? Because the product levers are going to be completely different. The product lever in rural areas is going to be more about simplifying the interface for low-tech literacy. The other side is going to be more about building trust and security perception. This one clarifying question shows more product maturity than 10, 15, 20 minutes of new random ideas of solutionizing. It essentially demonstrates that you understand that this is not a monolithic market. You understand personas, you understand people, you understand the depth of product management. Airbnb, for example, is famous for a PM interview moment where a candidate was asked, are we optimizing for hosts or guests? Because the product levers are completely different for a host and a guest. This single question actually reframed the interview and ended up getting an offer. This is a real example for someone I worked with. 2 or 3 minutes into this step, get the clarity that you need, and then move on to the next step in your product design interview. Now that you've scoped the problem, now the key part to go ahead with this problem is to identify who are you designing for. Here is a rule that I try to drill in every learner at Ayuda. List 3 user segments and pick one. Explain why you picked it every single time. Now that you've scoped the problem, the next thing is to understand who are you designing for. Here is a rule that we try to drill into every learner at Ayuda. We list 3 user segments and pick one. Then you have to explain why you picked that one. Every single time, the same drill. As you can see on your screen, there are 3 options that you pick. Now, why 3? Because it shows the interviewer that you've considered the landscape. You are not tunnel visioning on just one group that struck your mind first, right? And then picking one actually shows that you can compress and focus, which is arguably one of the hardest PM skills. Now, how do you segment, right? You've picked 3 and now how are you going to do it, right? How are you going to pick these exact 3 personas that you see here? A big mistake that a lot of candidates do is that they segment the personas that they have by age. They say, okay, my first persona is 18 to 25-year-old. That actually tells you nothing useful. A 22-year-old IIT grad working in Bangalore and a 22-year-old daily wage worker in Bihar have completely different product needs. Instead of segmenting by age, segment by behavior, context, or life stage. Look at busy professionals, family shoppers, budget conscious students, first time users, power users. These are all actionable segments. To give you an example, if you were given this question on improving restaurant discovery on Zomato, the 3 segments would probably be 1, busy professionals ordering lunch near their office. 2 would probably be families planning a weekend and a dinner outing. And 3 would probably be college students looking for affordable options near their campus. And I'm going to focus on families. Why? Because they represent a higher order value. They are usually ordering for multiple people. And typically, they're higher frequency as well. Families eat out or order multiple times a week, and their decision making is usually complex because they've got kids, budgets, multiple dietary preferences, etc. So solving for them creates the most product depth and also the most revenue impact. Once I've done this, I then confirm, hey, I'd like to focus on family and them planning dinner outings and food orders, etc. Does that work for you, or would you prefer a different segment? This makes it a lot more collaborative, brings the interviewer in, and stops this from being a simple monologue. Right? To give you another example of a real product, Spotify actually does this beautifully in their product design. When they built Discover Weekly, they didn't end up designing for all users. They actually designed specifically for the curious listener who is stuck in a rut. Someone who loves music but is bored of repeating the same 50 songs again and again. And that is why that feature is so iconic and all of us use it so well. For the example that we have taken in this video, the example of shopping in a grocery store and improving that experience, the three personas are in front of you once again to describe this properly. For the example that we've been taking in this particular video around the shopping experience in a shopping store or in a mall or in a shopping mart, etc., the three personas are on your screen. And once again, created with actionability in mind. That is exactly what you need to do when you figure out your personas. Now you've picked your user, and this is where things start to go a little deep. And I mean really deep. The quality of your pain points determine the quality of the solutions you're going to end up with. If your pain points are generic, like the app is slow, the experience could be better, the font could be changed, your solutions will be equally generic. Garbage in, garbage out. As you can see on your screen, think about your user's core job to be done in the context. What is your user trying to accomplish? Where does it break down? What workarounds have they created for themselves? For family shoppers in our example, doing weekly grocery runs, let's say using Big Basket or Blinkit, the pain point is not just delivery is slow. The pain point is more around, hey, I forgot that item midweek and I have to place another order, which means double delivery charge and wasted time. I ended up overspending because there was no way to plan meals for the week and see the total cost up front. And of course, constantly battling nutrition, convenience and taste. ये healthy banana chips खा लेते हैं या फिर आज मैगी से काम चला लेते हैं. See how specific these pain points are. You can almost imagine someone's face in your mind when I talk about them. That's the bar. Not the users wanting a better experience. I hear that in mock interviews that we do all the time, and it literally tells me nothing. Give me a pain I can feel. Give me the visual representation of a person going through something that is an actual pain point. A very common trap here is that candidates end up sharing their own pain points and not the users. You're probably 20 something, right? And your grocery pain is going to be very different from a parent managing a household of 4 with a couple of kids, etc. Which means that you have to display empathy. You have to step into the user's shoes. To give you some product examples of great products doing well, Duolingo has understood this so well. For working professionals who try to learn a new language, the real pain point isn't the app is hard to understand. Is that the learning sessions don't fit into my fragmented schedule, and that's why progress essentially feels invisible. And eventually motivation crashes and the streak breaks and everything falls apart. The entire gamification system Duolingo built was built around these specific pain points and not generic engagement problems. So you also need to come up with these specific pain points whenever you're doing this in your interview. Now the fun part. Solutions. And trust me, this is the fun part, because if you've done the previous parts well, this is the easiest part and you will coast through this. Here is a framework within the framework to solutionize. And every single time, and I literally mean every single time, come up with 3 solutions across a spectrum. Number 1, the safe bet. The low risk, quick to build, incremental improvement that you can pick. This is your, we can ship this in 2 weeks kind of idea. 2, come up with the ambitious play. Requires long-term investment, maybe a quarter of engineering work, but can meaningfully move the needle. Can be a new technology, can be innovation, so on and so forth. Third is the moonshot, the wild answer, the creative answer. Maybe not feasible today, but shows that you can think really big and have vision. Use AI in this, use wearables in this, use some really wacky ideas in this that solve the problem. Just let go of all feasibility constraints at this point and just think about a wild solution. Now, why am I asking you to do this across 3 spectrums, across 3 levers rather? Because it gives the interviewer 3 very different things to evaluate your trade-off on. And it shows range. Any candidate can come up with a safe idea, and when you practice a lot of mocks, you will think that the safe idea will come to you immediately. But the ones that get you through the round, the ones that get you offers, is when you are able to think across this spectrum. Let's try and apply this to our, grocery shopper that we've been talking about, the family grocery shopper, right? A safe bet would be a smart shopping list that auto suggests items based on past orders and maps them to required aisles. Families essentially don't forget the dal or the milk again and again. An ambitious one would probably be a family meal zone inside the app, which gives you pre-curated recipe bundles of all these integrations together. It gives you nutritional info, estimated cost, one tap add to cart, and so on and so forth. Completely reduces all decision fatigue and increases basket size. The ingredients already exist in the catalog, right? You're just bundling them and presenting them differently. And then you talk about the moonshot, a personalized AI shopper that already generates your weekly grocery basket based on your family's preferences, based on the leftovers in fridge, the budget, and the availability of fruits that you like. You have a human in the loop to give an approval at checkout. Essentially, an AI nutritionist meeting a personal shopper. Now, each one of these actually solves the same core pain at different levels of ambition. And each one opens a completely different conversation about trade offs. Right? The first one does not have a lot of trade offs because it's a small implementation, can be done quickly, and so on and so forth. Whereas the moonshot will require heavy amounts of investment to get it right, which is exactly what the interviewer wants to know and go to. Right? Ola's evaluation, for example, is a great real life example of applying this part of the framework. Right? The safe solution that Ola did was to improve ETA accuracy. The ambitious one was to launch Ola Auto for a tier 2 cities, a completely new vehicle category. The moonshot is going to be probably be an autonomous vehicle, something that can be driven without drivers. A PM who can think across the spectrum in an interview situation will stand out immediately. A tip that I give all the students from Ayuda is to always take a product and combine it with a random technology. IRCTC versus voice bot. Boat headphones meets health monitoring. Swiggy meets AR, VR. Do this exercise daily for a week, 5 minutes each, and your brainstorming speed will genuinely become twice of whatever it is right now, and you will start thinking of more creative ideas whenever you come across them. Now, before we evaluate trade-offs, let's just make sure that we've got all three solutions crystal clear before we evaluate them, right? In the last slide, I just gave you a quick overview of them, but let me show you these three solutions clearly. Solution one was the smart shopping list. It basically shows what your family buys regularly, and it suggests what might be missing, maps the items to the aisles, so your in-store trip is different. You immediately know that, okay, now you need to go here to buy this, need to go there to buy this. Very low complexity, solves the forgetting items pain point very directly, but doesn't really stand out. A good solution. Solution two, the family meal zone, right? This is the one I find the most compelling because it's so simple but so beautiful. Think about it from the parent's perspective. Right now, they have to figure out what to cook every week, create a shopping list manually, check prices, balance nutrition, budget, so on and so forth. The meal zone collapses all of that into one single thing, which is a place to browse recipes that are designed for families, see the nutritional info and cost up front, add the entire bundle into your cart in one tap, and just solves all the decision fatigue in 1 minute. Right? Great idea, of course, has a lot of value, but is ambitious, would require investment. Solution three was the personal AI shopper. Right? In an ideal world, this actually removes all friction. Your family's includes the dietary needs, allergies, budget, taste, everything. We have AI systems that know what is there in your kitchen, what is there in your fridge, what is there in the last week's meal, what is there in this week's meal, and it generates the basket automatically. You just enter the PIN of your card and that's it, right? But building this basically is, building next level of personalization, a greatly personal infrastructure, which might require hardware, software, all of that integrated. A lot of data will be required. Very complex recommendation systems would need to be built. Customer support has to become extremely great and so on. But again, it's a moonshot for a reason, because when you've mentioned it, you're not evaluated on this trade-off. But now that we've got these three solutions, let's start evaluating them one by one. There are three solutions on the table. which means now your job is to pick one of them. This is where the PM judgment starts to show up. Not creativity, I'm using that word carefully, judgment. And interviewers pay really close attention to judgment. I like to use like a very simple impact versus effort matrix to prioritize. Plot each solution and reason through where they lie on the impact versus effort matrix like you see on the screen. Now, smart shopping list, a medium impact, low effort, helpful but not a game changer. Solves one great pain point, which is forgetting items, but doesn't touch the deeper issues of meal planning, nutrition, and so on and so forth. But it can be a quick win for sure. Family meal zone can be high impact, but pretty medium effort as well. And it directly tackles the decision fatigue, which is the core job to be done for the family shopper that we picked. And the implementation is smart as well, right? The ingredients already exist in the catalog. It's just like we are putting them together. It's not like we are inventing something new. We're bundling, changing the UI, merchandising it, etc., etc. And also it increases the average order value because now families are buying complete meal sets and not individual items. So pretty high impact and pretty good amount of effort as well. The AI personal shopper is of course high impact but very high effort. We're essentially building a full personalization platform that companies take years to build, like a recommendation engine, preference learning, feedback loops, edge case handling, etc., etc. Especially for a grocery store that wouldn't really have a strong technical team, this is years of investment. And, of course, the problem for AI is that it will need data to start even functioning, which means that for a while, it will just keep collecting data and not even give ROI. Right? So going in that direction is really a very, very large effort. With this spectrum, it's obvious that the family meal zone makes the most practical sense, the best impact to effort ratio, and essentially solves the core pain point as well. It aligns with the business goal of increasing, both satisfaction and revenue. And this is exactly the kind of trade-off that real companies actually also make. Right? For example, to give you another example of when a similar prioritization would have happened, Meesho. Now, early on, Meesho could have built like a full-fledged seller dashboard with analytics, CRM, inventory, and so on and so forth. Instead, what they did was they just enabled WhatsApp catalog sharing. That's all. Absurdly simple, low effort, but massive impact. They validated the demand even before they invested in tech at all. Just used WhatsApp as an infrastructure and managed WhatsApp one-on-one. Slack also made a similar call with the threads conversation that is there, right? The safe option was to have inline replies. The ambitious option was to have full threads. They shipped threading knowing that it would, fragment and break down some conversations, and that was an acknowledged trade-off that Slack had. But they knew that it would actually reduce noise in busy channels, and a strong PM candidate, if they are solving a problem for Slack, should be able to articulate both sides of this decision and prioritize accordingly, right? So that is how you basically get through prioritization. Create your 2x2 matrix, plot all the options that are there, and then make a very logical choice. And that is how you end up with a prioritized solution that you are going to recommend. Now, the last step, land the plane. State your recommendation in one clear sentence. Sometimes give it a catchy name as well. Link it back to the goal, call out the risk, explain the mitigation, all of that. But be very precise and very clear, right? Here is how the problem statement that we've been solving would sound in this case. My recommendation is the family meal zone. It's the highest impact, most feasible option that directly solves decision fatigue, and our family shoppers face this every day. It also aligns with our goal of increasing the customer satisfaction as well as the average order value or revenue per cart. A risk that I would also flag is the pricing perception. Bundles can actually feel more expensive compared to buying individual items, even if the per item cost is the same. There is also potential food wastage if families don't end up using all the ingredients in the bundle. I would mitigate this risk by designing bundles around seasonal and on-sale items so that the value becomes very obvious. I can also offer flexible portion sizes, maybe family of 2 versus family of 4, and start with a limited pilot, let's say in 10-15 stores, to iterate on this bundle design before I end up scaling. That right there is the user, the pain point, the solution, the trade-off, the recommendation, the risk, and the mitigation. And that forms the complete product design answer. The interviewer has a clear picture of what you think. And that is exactly the goal that you need to take. Now, to showcase how this actually happens in real life, in real products as well, I'll take the example of Lenskart. Now, Lenskart went through this same structure and it came up with a feature idea around virtual try-ons. The recommendation was clear: reduce the biggest purchase barrier for online eyewear, which was uncertainty about how it will look on my face. The risk was that AR would not be as accurate and it would vary across phone models. And they mitigated it by starting with a limited SKU set on only flagship phones. They measured the lift in conversions, and once that happened, they expanded. So the same framework actually applied at a top product company. Zerodha's coin platform is another great example. The solution there was very bold: a zero commission for mutual funds. The risk was, of course, revenue cannibalization from their existing distribution business of stocks. The mitigation was that it drove user stickiness to the Zerodha ecosystem and increased the lifetime value overall. This is the kind of reasoning that you need to show in your PM interviews as well. Now, let me recap very quickly. Let me pull it all together one time so you can see the complete arc as you see on your screen. We started by scoping, understood we are trying to improve grocery shopping with a goal of increasing satisfaction and revenue. We identified 3 user segments: busy professionals, family shoppers, budget students, and chose family shoppers because of their high value and complex needs. Then we went deep on their pain points, forgetting items, overspending, balancing nutrition, convenience, and so on. We ended up brainstorming 3 solutions across the safe, ambitious, and moonshot spectrum. And then we evaluated trade-offs using our impact versus effort metrics, and the family meal zone came out as the sweet spot. We ended up recommending it with conviction and obviously linked it toward the original business goal and proactively called out all the risks with mitigation strategies as well. That's your entire arc: user, pain, solution, trade-off, recommendation, risk, and mitigation. Every product design answer that you give should follow this shape. The content, of course, changes. The structure, however, stays. Finally, before we close this video, let me rapid fire the mistakes I see most often in Ayuda's coaching sessions. Number 1, jumping to solutions before establishing the user. This is the number 1 killer every single time. The moment you've jumped into solutions, your product design interview is as good as complete. And of course, negatively. I cannot stress this enough. Number 2, designing for everyone. If your user is everyone, you're solving for no one. Either you segment or say goodbye to the product interview round. Number 3, proposing only one solution. No alternatives means that there is no discussion on trade-offs, and trade-offs are where interviewers actually see your judgment. 4 is ignoring feasibility. Bold ideas are great, but without any acknowledgement of what it takes to build them, they are reckless, and that gets you rejected. Right? If you are trying to propose something that is AI powered but not mentioning maybe regulatory constraints or problems that could happen with hallucination, etc., you are in trouble because the interviewer will feel that you are going to take risks that are not really well mitigated. Number 5, reciting the framework robotically. If the interviewer can hear the acronym in your head, okay, C is for comprehend, I is for identify, etc., you've lost the conversation already. The framework should be an invisible scaffolding and not the presentation itself. And finally, number 6 is spending so long on clarifying questions that you run out of time for solutions. So 2 to 3 minutes on scoping max. Then you move on to the bulk of the question and solve that. Last thing, and honestly this might be the most important part of the video, frameworks don't build the muscle, practice does. Reading about circles or just watching this video about how to answer this question, is only going to take you so far. The candidates who actually get offers are the ones who practice out loud, who get feedback and who iterate. Here is how you can do it. Pick 2 to 3 product design questions per week. Set a timer of 15 minutes. Answer out loud, not in your head, not writing, out loud. Record yourself. Because the interview is a spoken conversation, so the practice should also be spoken. Record yourself, like I said, I know it's uncomfortable, but do it anyway. You will catch your own rambling within 30 seconds of playing it back. You will hate wherever you are rambling. Painful but effective. Do mock interviews with a friend, colleague, or a coach. Feedback from another human accelerates your growth by at least 5x compared to solo practice. At Ayuda, for example, learners who do 10 or more mock interviews with me before their target interview have a 5 times higher conversion rate than those who just study frameworks. That's actually actual numbers, not random guesses. And that's across thousands of learners we've worked with. And finally, a bonus exercise, which is take a product, Swiggy, IRCTC, Aether, Lenskart, etc., combine it with a random technology, AR, AI, voice interface, blockchain, IoT, etc. Keep brainstorming these improvements for 5 minutes and do this daily for a week. Your brainstorming speed will genuinely double up. And oh, finally, one more thing. In an actual interview, it's completely fine to say, give me 130 seconds to organize my thoughts. You won't be penalized for thinking. You will be penalized for rambling without actually having a point. If this framework clicked for you, imagine what structured one-on-one coaching does for your interview prep. At Ayuda, our flagship program includes live product design mock interviews scored on the same lenses that actual interviewers at top companies use. You get personalized feedback on your specific patterns and not some generic tips from a YouTube video. Whether you're transitioning into PM, pushing for a senior PM role, or even preparing for FAG interviews, we've helped hundreds of PMs crack roles across the spectrum. So check us out on ayuda.co.in. The link is in the description. All the very best for your interviews. Please go and give it a practice tonight. I'm sure you've got this.